Good afternoon and welcome to the Standards Subcommittee. Present on the committee today we have Councillors Buckley, Fitzsimmons, Froggatt and Parish. Also on the call is Matthew Cumberbatch, Director of Law and Governance and the Council's Monitoring Officer. I'll hand over to the Chair now to formally open the meeting.
Okay, welcome everybody. Do we have any apologies?
No apologies received yet, Chair.
So Councillor Marks may or may not join us in the near future. Declarations of interest. Okay, minutes the previous. You okay with those?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Good. Okay, Matthew, over to you.
Thank you, Chair.
I can't hear anyone.
Can't hear anybody. Can't hear you, Matthew.
Sorry, Chair, I'll start again. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
So this is the first of 3 reports, Chair, and it's the usual monitoring officer update, and this is the regular update for the subcommittee on conduct issues. We haven't provided one of these for 12 months due to the issues around the pandemic and not having a meeting for that time. But during that time, Chair, as you'll be aware, I have kept in contact with you on various issues relating to complaints and other matters, and with the subcommittee on issues such as the LGA consultation, which is mentioned later on in the meeting. If I may take the items in turn on this report, and to deal first of all with the terms of reference at paragraph 4.1. Always good practice to review the terms of reference for every committee, and on this occasion you have the terms of reference at page 12, and it's a matter for you, the committee, to have a look through those to see whether you're still happy with what's there, whether or not anything needs tweaking or changing. The only issues I would refer you to probably would be sections F, G, H and L that are covered to some degree by the Audit and Corporate Governance Committee, actually. So a matter for you. They can stay in here if you like, or if you think they ought to be amended to reflect what has happened recently with regard to how the committee have looked at these things, the main committee and this committee, then that's a matter for you. Chair, I'll stop there and take any questions or comments, if I may, on the terms of reference issue.
Okay, any comments or questions on the terms of reference? Happy with the ones we've got? Take that as a yes. Okay, continue.
So yes, unless there's any good reason for changing anything, status quo seems to prevail.
Okay, I'm happy with that.
Yes.
I see people nodding, so continue please, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. I think moving on, we have the complaints there. The tables that you see refer to actual formal complaints that are treated as such. To be clear, these are complaints that have gone forward as formal complaints. There'll be some written complaints that come through to us. Sometimes they come through by way of the formal complaint route with the filling in the appropriate forms. Other times through the contact centre, other times phone calls. Myself or the Deputy Monitoring Officer will often speak to the potential complainants to talk to them through the process, and also to look at sanctions or lack of them. In some cases, some complainants decide not to pursue matters. In others, matters can be dealt with on a relatively informal basis. But obviously, when matters do go forward formally, which are the complaints that you see on the table in front of you, then the independent person is consulted, and then we look at how to resolve the matter. Many of the ones we've had in recently have been at the lower end of the scale, and in many cases as not seen as being in the public interest to pursue further, or there's been some other outcome that we've resolved informally. So that is the situation with regard to complaints. If you're happy for me to move on to other matters in the report.
Chair, can I raise one item? I'm aware that I had a conversation with Mr. Cumberbatch because a complaint had been made and I'd been identified, apparently from my picture on the council website, which was a few years ago now, but I could assure Mr. Cumberbatch it was not me. But it does raise the issue of what happens if a member of this committee is aware that one of the complaints in the actions taken box might have been against them. Should they have to declare an interest, in which case it becomes rather obvious that a complaint has been made against you. So I'm just wondering how we would deal with that.
That's a pity Councillor Marks isn't here. I'll leave it at that.
I think, Chair, that there are always issues as to whether things are formal or not. This is an open agenda item, and if we were going to personalise anything in respect to any particular councillor, I would expect in the first instance, if it's an ongoing complaint, it would be put into part 2. But as you know, if a finding is made of misconduct, then it's normally the case that a notice is published anyway, and so that the public would already be aware, and therefore it wouldn't be so much of an issue. So I think that's the point I'd make about that. And clearly, as I say, if it's just initial inquiries, then it wouldn't normally appear on that table anyway.
Just to answer your question there, Steve, there is precedent for what you've just said, and it was dealt with in the appropriate way, and it was okay.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more comments then before we move on? Okay, thanks, Matthew.
Okay, moving on to other matters. I just wanted to put in a mention training, really. Normally, as you know, I put on a training session twice a year, normally at the town hall, and we were due to do that after the elections, which were planned for May, because we were obviously expecting a change in membership in some degree, and clearly we had to cancel that. There was also a plan to go out to one of the local parish councils and invite parish councillors for a more bespoke parish councillor training session. Again, we've had to put that back as well. Those are now scheduled to take place after the rescheduled elections in May of next year. Moving on to talk about the DPI forms, Register of Interest forms. Again, we've written to all councillors over summer, just inviting them to review their forms to make sure that they're up to date and to let us know of any updates and changes. It's always a responsibility for those councillors anyway, but there's no harm, I think, in sending just a reminder out to look at them occasionally to make sure they're up to date. We have had quite a few replies, either to say no, they're fine, or to provide us with an update. And obviously, those will be those are being put onto the website to make sure that we're fulfilling our legal obligation by doing that, and also as a matter of good practice. And I think the final matter to talk about, which I'll be grateful for thoughts from the committee on, is regarding the independent person. Just to confirm, just before lockdown in March, both of the independent persons were able to attend training by Hoey Ainscough Associates, very experienced in conduct matters, and both attended for that training, which is very useful. But we note that their term of office is due to end in December this year, and there is a requirement, obviously, for us to have people in those posts. I've spoken to them. I've obviously consulted with the chair before writing this report as well to see what to do. We have, of the two, one has said that they are prepared to extend their term if appointed by full council, because that's what would have to happen. Another has said that she's happy to hand over to someone else, but will also remain in post whilst we run a recruitment process, which again must be in line with the legislation. I've put in paragraph 8.6 of my report my conclusions and my recommendations to you. I've always found the independent persons that we have to be very responsive. They've always read the complaints. They always provide me with really good and robust feedback, and often suggest things to me from a public point of view, which would change how I may deal with a complaint. And I think their work has been invaluable. It is an unpaid role. And so I'm even more grateful, obviously, for them giving up their time for free to provide this very important support for us. So the question is whether or not the committee are happy to put to full council that Mr. Clark is appointed for a further 4 years and Ms. Mason for up to about 6 months, no more than that, whilst we look to recruit, and also to allow us to start that recruitment process again and perhaps involve members of the committee in that recruitment process. So I think that covers what I wanted to say by way of presentation, Chair. Obviously happy to take any questions or any comments on the report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Are there any comments so far?
I just agree with what Matthew said. I think that's, if some feedback can go back to them to say thank you very much for all the hard work, and I agree with what is being suggested.
I concur with that. I've got a note here to say if there's some form of recognition we can give Mrs. Mason other than a letter of thanks. token of some kind?
Yes,
We will look at that, Chair, and I'll talk to Democratic Services about what we can do for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and so we'll go to the recommendations 15.1. There are 3. For the record, we'll take them in order. So Matthew's got, Adam's got formally there. So on A, that we present the terms of reference as agreed today to the annual council in November. Is that agreed for everyone?
Chair,
do you want a formal vote?
Just for our records, Chair, can I just record at somebody to move in seconds so that I've got that just down for our records? Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll move it.
And seconded.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Thank
we
you,
all
Chair.
agreed?
Yes.
Okay. And okay, that's unanimous. We'll then go on to B with the
I'll move that.
yeah, and seconded.
I'll second it.
Okay, that agreed.
Yes.
And then the third one, the recruitment for replacements.
Happy to move that, Chris.
Yeah, and agreed and seconded.
I'll second it. Yeah.
Okay, that agreed unanimously then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's done for the record. Okay, no other business. So we're back again at 6, I think. We are starting at 6, aren't we?
Chair, we do have, there are a couple more reports if you want me to go through those, just in terms of the recommendations from the Committee on Standards in Public Life and the third report just on the consultation.
Okay then.
Are you happy for me to deal with those quickly?
Yeah, very quickly, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, Chair, the subcommittee may recall that earlier last year I presented a report setting out the findings made by the Committee on Standards in Public Life. The report is contained, is there a link? The Committee on Standards in Public Life report is a link at paragraph 2.1. I will, obviously we've been through it before and it is 110 pages, so I'm not planning to go through it during this meeting. But it maintained the importance of good governance, the ethical framework at a local level, and the need for an effective code of conduct, investigation mechanism, and basically a system and culture that works at a local level. What happened earlier this year is the committee wrote to the Chief Executive here at Warrington Borough Council to ask whether or not we were meeting their recommendations. And what you have at Appendix A of that second report is my response or a joint response, and Adam Callop from Democratic Services put some of this together as well, so that you can see what we have done to meet those recommendations and in some cases where we haven't met those recommendations and why. So I'm not going to go through them all individually, but simply to say that those recommendations are there for you to review in terms of how we've acted. If there is any more action that you want me to take as monitoring officer in respect to those recommendations, then I'm happy to obviously take your guidance as a subcommittee and then get on with anything else that we need to do. Thank you, Chair.
I think as members will recall, we were all consulted and I think everyone had the chance to respond.
Yes.
And remember, it says all your responses have been included in the report, in the response.
Yes.
Very accurately as well. So I don't think we've anything to add really to what we've already done.
No.
Okay, Chair. I mean, I think that works in terms of what we were saying with the new code. It's just with the recommendations that are in the report at part 2. It's just that I think we just I was just obviously concerned that you were happy if the committee come back to us and said, well, you haven't met everything, and that's at page. Those are at page 19 and through to 22 on the report. So 22 on the papers that you've got. So if members are happy to just move and second that it's noted and no further actions required, then obviously I'll be happy just to move on and cover very quickly the third report.
Okay, then. Can we have a mover and a second down?
Yeah. Yeah, move recommendation 10.1.
10.1.
That the report be noted and that no further action may be required.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Matthew, final report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just finally, and this is nothing more than just to make sure we formally present it before the committee, Obviously, ideally, we would have liked to have done this slightly differently, but we are looking at a new code of conduct. It all links in, as you've said, Chair, to what we've done earlier in the year, what the Committee on Standards and Public Life have done, looking at perhaps having a new model code of conduct that the LGA are going to put forward. There was a consultation, which was a little stop-start, as you may remember, as we asked for some responses from you and then found that it hadn't been officially launched, but we got there in the end, and we put together a response which was seen by all members of the committee, signed off by yourself, Chair, and then went in as part of that consultation. As yet, I haven't heard anything. Obviously, I appreciate it's not been very long, and the government clearly has other matters which it's looking to at the moment. But it's just there for noting and just to make sure that the committee formally notes that was sent and that it involved their representations. So I think just again to note, Chair, and I'm obviously happy to take any questions or comments.
Are there any comments or questions, please?
No.
Do we know even if other councils have made similar comments? Was it all still within the LGA bowels of the offices?
Chair, if I may, I've not seen an outcome document yet. Obviously, we'll keep looking, and if I have missed it, then obviously I'll make sure that you have a link to that and you see what's coming out. Irrespective of whether we've got a meeting or not, I'll keep you up to date with what the results are. Thank you.
Because one would hope they do a collation of all the responses before they actually deliberate on them.
Yes, and it'll be interesting to see. I think there'll be a broad cross-section because I think there was some input before the questions went out, and clearly as a subcommittee I think you had issue with some of the points raised there, so it'll be interesting to see the breadth of responses that come in.
Doesn't apply to Parliament though, does it, this code of conduct?
I beg your pardon?
Ministers. Doesn't apply to Parliament or ministers, does it? This?
Yes, the ministerial code is different, and also this one won't be set out, I don't think, in statute particularly, although some parts of it might need some statutory changes if they want to put sanctions in, for example. It is just a requirement that we have a code under the Localism Act, and it will be a model code, so it may just be one that's recommended rather than one which we have to follow by law, but we'll obviously wait and see how that all turns out. Thank you.
So does that mean the LGA will produce a model code, but we wouldn't necessarily adopt or adapt it for ourselves? We would just say there is a model code.
I think so. I mean, it'll be something where you'll be able to look at it and decide what you want to do. The Localism Act does set out certain principles by which the code has to adhere to. So obviously we will make sure that any code suggested would do that. The model code obviously will be useful as a starting point. And then if you have any decision to make as to whether you want to move away from it, then obviously I'll give you advice on that in terms of the guidance and what the implications may be.
Okay, so we stick to the default model code unless we decide differently. Is that the?
Well, you as a council, you have to adopt the code, and you've adopted the one so far. So you'd have to actually properly adopt it through full council. That would obviously require that. Then otherwise the old one would remain, and that would require coming through this committee for you to analyse it and see whether you were happy with it or whether or not you thought you needed a tweak here and there.
Thank you very much.
Do you need a formal mover and seconder for this one as well?
I think it's helpful to have a move and second, and then as it's for noting, if the will of the meeting is to go with what's been moved and seconded, that should be sufficient. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so any mover, please.
I'll move it.
Seconder.
Second.
Okay. Yeah. That concludes our business, I think. So, see you all again at 6, and thank you for your attendance.
Thanks.
See you later. Have a nice
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.